Hello and welcome to Christmas at Caynham Castle and other things that we love that are holiday related and romantic and all of that good stuff. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and we've got great authors here today to talk about the collection and what we love about holiday romance. So I'm going to let everybody else introduce themselves. Nancy, how about you?
I'm Nancy Northcott, and I am a contributor to Christmas at Caynham Castle and Trick or Treat at Caynham Castle. And I write historical fantasy for Falstaff Books with Jeanne, who's next to me on my screen. I don't know where she is on yours. I write the Outcast Station science fiction mystery series, and I also write several subgenres of romance, including romantic suspense, which is what I have at Caynham Castle.
Jeanne.
Oh, good. I get to go next. I write urban fantasy. I write paranormal romantic suspense, which is what I have in both Caynham Castle and Trick or Treat at Caynham Castle, Christmas and Halloween. I write, as Nancy said, the Outcast Station with her, and I write straight romantic suspense as well.
Donna.
Hi, I write historical romance, but I like to have humor in my historical romance. So you can't read anything of mine without laughing at some point. I wrote in Caynham, Christmas at Caynham Castle, and I also do a little paranormal. So that's me.
And Anna.
Hello from Cambridge in England. I write hockey-based romances for Entangled and for Harlequin, and I'm also indie published. And I've known most of these gals since 2006, when we were all in the Romance Bandits together. And it's great that we're all part of this anthology now. That's me.
And Caren.
I'm Caren Crane. I write women's fiction and contemporary romance. And I have stories in the Christmas at Caynham Castle and Trick or Treat at Caynham Castle anthologies. And yes, I was hooked in by the Romance Bandits as well.
I'm Gail Z. Martin, and I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, and more. But as Morgan Brice, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. And in Christmas at Caynham Castle, I've got a couple from my Deadly Curiosities series visiting, and in Trick or Treat from Caynham Castle, I'm writing as Morgan Brice with another couple from one of my other series visiting. So it's kind of fun to switch it up and move it around. Nancy and Jeanne, you folks you created the castle that is the common setting for all of our stories. One fictional castle, but we all take it in different directions. And most of the time, the stories happen at relatively the same time around a series of events. Talk a little bit, please, about bringing a fictional castle and fictional village to life, because you two have really put in the hard work of doing the world building on this.
It was so much fun.
Jeannie's our map person.
Yeah.
You want to know where something is, you ask Jeanne and she draws you a map.
Yes, or if you need something that's not on the map, you ask Jeanne and she puts it on the map for you, which is, I hate to think how many versions of these maps and diagrams that Jeanne has drawn. But castles are my jam. And so when it came to the idea of writing an anthology in a shared location, I was always going to default to a castle first. And I got this idea at a romance conference or reader conference, Rust City, that Caren and Donna also happened to be attending. And this was really lucky for me because I could buttonhole them and go, I've got this idea, we need to do this. And they're kind of used to that for me. So they went, yes, that's a very nice idea. Yes, I would be glad to participate in that, because, you know, they wanted to live past the end of the conference. So and then actually followed up on it. And so I went to Ludlow, which is a castle I love, and took more pictures than any sane human could want. Anytime I'm at a castle, I take more pictures than any sane human would want.
I've been here with her to castles, and I know Anna has too, and she does take more pictures than
I do the same thing, Nancy, so I'm with you.
Okay. And so we all love the round chapel at Ludlow Castle, so we kind of adopted that. I've been to Middleham Castle several times because of the Richard III connection that I'll do everybody a favor and not plunge into right now. And so Jeannie and I have been there together. And so at Middleham, they have the kitchen under the Great Hall. And that seemed to us to make a lot of sense, because then you just go right up the steps with the food and there you are. So we gave Caynham Castle a kitchen under the Great Hall. And then everybody contributed ideas for what they needed for the castle. And Jeannie is the one who really coordinated that, because I kind of went, okay, we're going to do this castle. Everybody go. And Jeannie was the one who coordinated what everybody wanted. So she should probably talk about that.
My biggest actually at the beginning was that we nailed down where the Christmas trees were, so we didn't have the great roving Christmas tree migration through everybody's story, where a 30-foot Christmas tree, it's there, no, it's there, no, it's over here, and that's kind of creepy. So I thought we should kind of make them fixed points. That was my contribution.
Well, you also contributed an ornament for that tree, one that had
You
been.
did. You had a lovely story for the ornament for the Christmas tree, which I think most of us referred to.
Oh, thank you. And then the I think I also put in those two rooms that were redone.
Yeah.
And the
A la
missing-
Downton
Go ahead.
Abbey.
Yeah.
Well, I know Karen and Nancy know this, and Donna does too, because she was down in North Carolina with us, gosh, a year ago or so. Biltmore House in Asheville, North Carolina has two areas that are set up because of the popularity of Downton Abbey. They had two areas set up for that sort of recreated. Now the whole house is kind of golden era recreation, but they had some very specific Edwardian things. And so we set that up in Caynham Castle. And so much of this was so fun for me, because I love to draw and draft and things like that. I'm a wannabe architect. And pulling the different pieces from different castles and different ideas, and where we put the Christmas tree, where we put the different towers, and creating the folly. I think the folly was for Donna and Anna, right? You all both needed the folly.
Yeah, I used it. I used it. I don't know if I was the one that requested it, but I'm my story is set so far in advance of yours that many of the things, I just wanted to let readers know that many of the things that you're discussing will not show up in my story, right? Because it is 100 years before today.
The rest of the stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a stick tap to your couple, because there is a statue in the grounds of Caynham Castle by the Folly, which is actually a statue that's a tribute to Donna's characters in her story.
About the only thing that I contributed was the gargoyles.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We've all had such fun with those.
They were fun.
Tell us a little more about the legend of the gargoyles and why the gargoyles are so important.
Well, the legend, the gargoyles are mainly important because I really like them. So that's why they were incorporated. But there's a legend in the story that the gargoyle's eyes will light up, or if he sees a true love match. Now, you don't know where the gargoyle is. The legend does not disclose which gargoyle has these, has this ability. But if the gargoyle can see you, if the gargoyle can see the couple, then it will signify that this is a true love match. But there's gargoyles all over the castle. So trying to find the right one can be fun.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Anna? Did you request any particular rooms?
Well, because the character in my book, in my story, is a character called Ryan Gray, and he owns a restaurant on the banks of the Hudson in New Jersey, probably sort of Weehawken area in New Jersey. And he appears in several of my Ice Cats stories, and he's the one that a lot of readers wanted his story. So this seemed like an ideal way to bring my Ice Cats to England. So he is actually the chef for the big ball and the sort of winter extravaganza type event that's taking place at Caynham Castle. So a lot of the that side of it was my contribution to it, because that was necessary for Ryan's story. So that's where what the ball is like, what the decorations were like. And also because I have a particular fondness, I'm learning how to ring English church bells. I added a ringing, or I asked Jeannie to add a ringing room to the round tower so that we could have the ringing room.
Awesome. And Caren?
A lot of my story takes place in the chapel, in the round chapel. I had the heroine in my story was a wedding planner who was over from Cross Springs, North Carolina, which is where my fictional town, where most of my books are set. And she was there because there was an English family who the mother of this family was from Caynham, the Caynham area. And so her daughter was getting married. They were having this huge wedding, and it was taking place in the chapel. So I do use the chapel. I use Anna's ringing room in a couple of scenes. So that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to use that. And yes, I did need to know where the Christmas trees were. So thank you, Gail.
Just a crazy person who kept going, but where are the Christmas trees? Oh, nice, but where are the trees?
And I did also use the gargoyles. So
yes, I think we all probably used the gargoyles. I think two of the rooms that I had requested, and in my mind, for illustrative purposes only, I kind of based them on a couple of the sitting rooms at Biltmore, which I've been obsessed with and have gone to many, many times. But there was kind of a sitting room, a men's room and a women's room, because they separated people back in Victorian times, that had been recreated by the castle with period furniture and authentic antiques. And one of my characters can sense magic in weaving. And so when he comes upon a piece of embroidery, that kind of kicks off the whole story, because he picks up that it's more than what it appears. And there's also kind of a tapestry with that too. So those were sort of the building pieces that I threw in there. And then we had to find a place. So where can we put these? I need these two rooms. Where can they be? What building are they in? They moved back and forth from Tower A to Tower B. We moved them a few times before we figured that out.
Yeah.
What is it about, so we all had fun doing this shared enough that 4 of us are back doing it for Trick or Treat. Same castle, same town, building it out a little more. What did we learn the hard way on the Christmas anthology that we're doing a little differently on the Trick or Treat collection?
Always know where the Christmas tree is. We did make sure that we all described the decorations, both in the reception area and at the ball, the same way. And we all sort of traded our stories back and forth ahead of time so that we could make sure we had things correctly. That was one thing that worked really, really well, to make sure that we could switch around and make sure that we all had described things the same way. That was fun too.
As well as being a map goddess, is a Caynham Castle Bible goddess, and she has been responsible for pulling together the Caynham Castle Bible, which has everything from characters to places to descriptions to everything, so that we have one central Bible of, you know, what everything's called, where everything is, who people are, and how they're all related and so on, which is a godsend when you need to remember the name of the pub that's in Caynham, or the name of the yarn shop.
Well, and my character in The Christmas at Caynham Castle is actually the Earl of Caynham. And so he ends up appearing in a lot of people's stories because, you know, Earl. And as Nancy would tell us all, it makes for a very interesting intellectual property copyright page. But because he was the one sort of leading the charge at Christmas, he does appear again in everybody's Halloween stories too. So that was kind of fun to revisit that. And my story in both Christmas at Caynham Castle and Trick or Treat at Caynham Castle are both ghost stories.
Yeah, mine's definitely a ghost story in Christmas at Caynham Castle. And Trick or Treat, it ends up being, you know, chasing a long lost Knights Templar fortune. Although it's got a ghost in it too, come to think of it.
Yes.
So what, you know, we've got these holiday romance stories, and all it takes is turning on TV to find the Hallmark Channel, which just announced its whole lineup for the season. Why do we love holiday romance stories so much? Because apparently it's not just us. What is it about the holiday stories that really make us want to fall in love or believe somebody is?
I think it's the magic. I think it's that, particularly with Christmas, everyone has this memory of being a child and how magical Christmas was as a child. And I think we all are trying with watching movies and reading holiday romances and, you know, just consuming all of these Christmas stories. We're trying to recapture maybe a little bit of that Christmas magic, and we want to, we crave it, especially these days, but you know,
I think the other
we
thing,
need an escape.
I think the other thing that's, I have a series of short stories, Ice Cat short stories, that are all set at various different holidays. And I think the thing that interested me, because I asked readers which holidays they'd like to see. I've done Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween, and they all came back with things like Memorial Day, July 4th, Easter. You know, I thought they'd stick to kind of the big holidays, but actually, I think what they liked was a special day, and a special day that involves probably family, children. You know, I think you can include any of the holidays as long as it's not ordinary today. And I think that's what readers were looking for. So I think that's what makes it for everybody, that it just takes you, and of course romance takes you out of today and your normal life. So I think this is just an extra way of doing it.
I think Christmas is popular because of all the tradition and because of the music. Whatever holiday has carols. They're great. So there's a whole, and there's food, special foods that we associate with Christmas. So there's a whole community of things going around that holiday. But I think why it affects romance so much is it's also a holiday of reunion, of visiting families, of coming back home. And all of those things just, they just hit the heart and tug at the heartstrings.
And don't forget the twinkle lights. I mean, you know,
oh yeah,
Christmas light. You gotta understand, I think that if you don't have enough lights on your tree that it looks like the, you know, used car lot and you can see it from space, that there's room for more. So
Nothing wrong with that, Gail?
I'm with you, Gail.
yeah.
Hey, Gail, did you ever have the bubble lights? We had the
Yes.
bubble lights on the tree.
Yeah, I start with a pre-lit tree and then add another 4,000 or 5,000 lights just because.
Amen, sister. Same.
Yeah.
Same.
So yeah, I mean, with all those beautiful lights, who can resist falling in love? I mean,
That's right. That's
it's like
right.
being into the stars.
I'd like to pick up on something that Anna and Donna referred to, which is family in holiday stories, especially Christmas stories. Not everybody's families are Norman Rockwell-esque at the holidays. For some people, those family gatherings are what we might charitably call fraught. And if you pick up a holiday romance, yeah, there might be a few issues, a couple of people in the family, but it's never going to be the kind of thing that leads the family to nuclear war. And it's all going to work out by the end of the story. And so even if your family is not the type that all pulls together like they do in the holiday stories, you can experience that family and be part of it. And I think that has a lot of appeal to people too in holiday romance stories.
I so totally agree with that. I think that any story has that capacity, but especially holiday stories, to help you find a space for what it should be and what you'd like it to be, and step into that space even for a little while. And if your family is one of those ones that fraught, I like that word, you can say, I'm just going to go read for a little bit and go, wow, this would be nice. But I think that's why we also like some of the other holiday romances too. As Anna said, I've never thought about setting one at Memorial Day, but you know, that's found family. That's when you invite all the people that you didn't grow up with necessarily, but that you want there, that you want to party with, that you want to have a good time with. You invite everybody to the lake, you know, and go boating or just whatever, go to the pool or to the park. And those kind of things, I'd like to actually see more of those. 4th of July, Memorial Day, you know, Labor Day, because then you get even more opportunity for the found family, which I am very high on. And I think you can do that at Thanksgiving and Christmas too. But I think Nancy and Donna have it right, and the twinkle lights too. I'm big on lights. My neighbors probably are like, thank God she finally took those down. But see, I start with lights at Halloween and go straight through about January 6th. So just see it from space.
The other thing that you get with some of the holidays, especially the holidays where you traditionally go home, is it provides a lot of insight into the characters that you don't get in their day-to-day. So in Lucky Town, which is the Christmas installment of my Badlands series, Simon and Vic go home to Vic's huge Catholic Italian family in Pittsburgh, who are all cops. And Simon gets to see Vic with his brothers and his cousins and this massive family, because Simon doesn't come from that kind of family or that close of a family. And then when trouble strikes, everybody's got their back. And that's an insight you wouldn't have gotten just in seeing them go about their normal business, because the family is 600 miles away. So I think that's another thing that we get with some of the holiday ones, especially if you're writing about an ongoing established couple. It's kind of getting to see them in a different light, which is kind of nice and a lot of fun to write.
Well, I think it was I think it was one of Nancy's. It was either The Christmas Guy or one of the others, where the heroine sees him a certain way, you know, competent, strong, and then they go home to the family, or she's the next door neighbor, I think, and sees him as the younger brother, a whole different perspective. And I may be mixing up both of your stories. I can't remember, Nancy, but I always thought that was cool too, as you see this. And I thought that was great in Lucky Town, because you sort of see him as this competent person, and then suddenly he's somebody's younger brother, his kid brother. And they've got him in a headlock and given him a noogie. It's like,
because
oh yeah, competent cop.
yeah, he's an older brother and a cop. Of course he's going to do that.
I was going to say that I like fish out of water tropes. I use a lot of them in my stories, no matter where they're set. But at Christmas time, it makes it very easy, because not only can the outsider come into a family and see the hero or other people in a different environment, but just adjusting to that different environment can lead to a lot of humor. And I like that, because we have all felt like a fish out of water at some point in time. We have all been embarrassed. We've all wondered what to do now, how to survive, what can we do? So I think that a lot of times readers can recognize themselves in the Christmas stories that we write, and the different positions that we put the characters in.
Well, and the other thing about homecoming stories is there's always unresolved stuff that comes up.
Yes.
And, you know, the traditional Hallmark movie is, you know, somebody comes home from the big city to the small town, realizes that they never should have broken up with their high school boyfriend, and they live happily ever after. That seems to happen a lot.
And if you play Hallmark bingo, you're drunk now, because you've got the cityscape scene, you've got the returning home, you've got the ex-boyfriend. Take a drink.
Christmas
Oh
parade,
man, I'd be
let's
so
not forget.
snookered.
When I was at a convention, I heard one of the actors who had been in one of the Christmas movies talking about how incredibly unromantic filming those scenes are, because, you know, it's not really a kiss, it's a pose that sort of gets the lips close to each other, but it's, you know, and he was talking about how there's no romance whatsoever when you've got people moving your head and shoving you forward and like posing you like a mannequin, and now look romantic. So I thought that was, I can't watch those movies now without thinking about what he said. Fortunately, in books, you don't have that problem. What are your favorite holiday tropes? Since Donna brought up tropes, that's a good one. What are your favorite tropes?
Well, I love that. I love the one of coming home, coming home and meeting up with either somebody that's also home, and you're both sort of home when you didn't expect to be home. I also like the coming home from the big city or from the small town to the big city. Either way it goes. I like both of those a lot.
I love a second chance at romance. I really love those stories. And actually Nancy's story in Trick or Treat at Caynham Castle is a second chance at romance story. So I appreciated that a lot and had to let her know how much I loved that. But that is one of my favorites.
I like found family. My stories tend to, in general, tend to involve found family more than blood family. And I'm just thinking about the Christmas stories I've written, and they're mostly found family to the extent there is a family in the stories. It's like a community of people who pull together and have each other's backs, like we would all like to think everybody's family pulls together and has their back. And so I sort of like the thing that appeals to me about it, and I'm not saying this very well, is the person who maybe doesn't fit where they came from, but fits where they landed. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I have a similar thing, because obviously I write about hockey team. So you're talking about very much a found family, actually a purchased family if you look at it technically. But yeah, you're talking about a found family in that way. So a lot of the holiday stories that I've written have tended to be showing how the hockey team is the family that is behind the hero or heroine, which is kind of a nice way of describing how a lot of us are with our found families. They tend to be from interests or sports or connections or whatever, and I think that makes things really great. And my favorite trope is friends to lovers, because that was my trope.
Now, I love friends to lovers too, and I also love found family. In the Christmas book in my Witchbane series, most of the book is, you know, fighting a monster, fighting a dark warlock. But the two people that come to help the main characters, Seth and Evan, one of them runs he's an ex-priest and an ex-ninja priest. It's a long story. But he now runs a halfway house in a downtrodden area of Pittsburgh. And they all come to spend Christmas with him at the halfway house because he's on duty. And so they spend it with Travis and with the folks who are living in the halfway house and spend the Christmas with them. And so it's just kind of this all pulling together on this day that might not be terribly happy for everybody, but they've got each other. So what, geez, we've talked about a lot of things with Christmas at Caynham Castle, but what are some of the details? I know we kept bugging Anna, since she is our, resident UK expert, on, hey, would they actually do this? What would they do instead? Does it work like that over there? So I can't think of how many emails we sent you about how things are done, or what you call your version of the dollar store.
Well, it was good. It was good to do the switch, because normally I'm writing to to my friends and saying, I know I've been home from New Jersey now for 12 years, so I kind of forget what this is called and that's called, and that's my big thing. But it was great because because I also grew up in the States. I have a split soul, so some of my cultural upbringing was American and some of it was English. So it's really nice to be able to marry the two and bring the two together. So when you ask me a question, I kind of know what you're talking about to be able to then give you the English version of it. And although we're very similar in so many ways, for a variety of different reasons, we have different cultures and different traditions and different things that are important. And also we're kind of, and Donna and Nancy are going to laugh at this because I often put this in their stories, we're kind of an understated nation. So things tend to be a lot more understated. So that's kind of part of the personality of the British people, if you like. And so even when we might do the same thing, it's sort of not, it's very rarely done to the, Christmas lights from space level.
Well, and that definitely came up in the trick or treat at Caynham Castle, because the Halloween traditions are, the whole massive trick or treat thing is a very American thing. And I guess it's rubbing off a little bit, but it's still done differently over there.
Well, when I grew up in Virginia, I knew what trick-or-treating was all about, and we had the little lumières in the street, the bags with the sand and the candles, and we had the jack-o'-lanterns and stuff. But in England, it wasn't a big deal. Our big thing was Guy Fawkes Night on the 5th of November, when we celebrate the fact that we caught Guy Fawkes trying to blow up the House of Parliament, and so we set off fireworks and have bonfires and burn the guy and all this sort of thing. But with our cultures being shared, with the internet, with television, with movies and so on, more and more has happened. So you will find in the stores here now that there are trick-or-treat costumes and Halloween items, and people do put, carved pumpkins and so on. The difference here is that because we are an understated nation, if you don't have anything Halloween outside your house, that means do not ring the doorbell. We don't do trick-or-treating or whatever. There isn't the whole everybody is, involved. It's you either take part or you don't take part. And if you don't, fair enough, So yeah, but it's getting bigger and bigger each year. Obviously, this year is slightly different, but in most years, you can, if you're at a train station, like in the centre of London, you will see all the people in the Halloween costumes going to Halloween parties and stuff. So,
we're rubbing off. Yay.
Well, and at least in Trick or Treat at Caynham Castle, we all get to go to a Halloween party in the book, even if we don't get to do a Halloween party for real this year. So that's a blast too. But, of course, then in Christmas at Caynham Castle, we had the ball, which was a big to-do. Talk a little bit about how that ball came together, because there were a lot of moving pieces in that, from the decorations to the food, because one of the characters was a caterer and putting it on. So tell us how that came around.
Well,
Anna started it. It's her fault.
Can you tell we've known each other for a few years? We started with the ball, and then we wanted to include other people's things. So for example, all the table decorations and all the greenery and so on were provided by Karen's hero. And then Ceresia, who's not with us, is she had an antiques shop in the story. So we used her antiques shop provided vintage table decorations. And obviously the Earl had to be involved because, you know, Earl. And we had a skating rink, which was in the moat of the castle. We had a sort of a made skating rink, which was kind of important for Nancy's characters. And that's how we sort of went on. We kind of tried to build and build so that everybody had a chance to incorporate what they wanted, but within the overall sort of.
I had a frost fair in my store, and I think that carried over. You also had a frost fair. And
Donna's Frost Fair then inspired the historical aspect of Donna's Frost Fair in her story, inspired the castle, the event coordinator, to say, why don't we include a Frost Fair type idea? So yeah, we tried.
Which I thought was great.
And I just had a unique moment here. I have a serious weakness for frost fairs because people may not realize that when Old London Bridge impeded the flow of the Thames, when it got really, really, really cold, the river froze. Queen Elizabeth walked from Greenwich on the river at one point, and people would set up tents and roast oxen and give rides and have games, and you could get cards printed that says, printed on the frozen Thames this date with your name for a penny or two. And I just always thought that was wonderful. So when we started incorporating frost fairs, my little geeky heart went, yes! When they built the bridge, the river flows better and the river doesn't freeze anymore, which is, you know, I guess overall good, but kind of disappointing.
Yeah. Well, I think that was planned. I think there were measures made so that it won't freeze anymore. At least I read that somewhere.
Yeah, totally logical, but not nearly as much fun.
No. I agree.
Yeah, I know. I bugged Anna about decorations because Jeanne and I are both big Halloween decorators, and as Anna's mentioned about things being a little more understated, maybe not, you know, plastic skeletons climbing the outside of buildings. As I saw a picture yesterday that looked horrifyingly interesting, but
I've done that.
Well, you don't know. You see that it's getting that way. I bet there will be one this year. When you're stuck at home, skeletons going up the wall probably will work.
So we've talked a lot about Christmas at Caynham Castle and Trick or Treat at Caynham Castle, which are the two collections that we've done. But what are some of your other favorite Christmas stories or Christmas romances, Christmas TV or movie romances that you just come back to every year?
I have one. I love Love Actually. It doesn't have Christmas in the title, but I think of it as a Christmas movie. And I can watch that any month of the year, and it still gives you that Christmas glow. Love that movie.
Well, typically I think Die Hard is one of the best Christmas movies.
Why does that not surprise me?
Christmas at Nakatomi Tower. There you go. And I also adore Scrooged with Bill Murray, because there's this scene where he's like telling the props guy to staple the antlers on the mouse's head, and the props guy's like horrified. It just makes me laugh every single time. I love Bill Murray, and he just makes me laugh every single time. So yeah, that's one of my favorites.
For the last few years, our favorite Christmas movie to watch while we're decorating the house and things like that has been Elf, which people love it or hate it. I love it. When we saw it in the theater when it first came out, I thought it was the funniest thing I had ever seen. I love Will Ferrell, and so for me, it's Elf these days.
You know, it's funny. Nobody usually thinks of my two favorites as romance movies, but really there's a romance at the heart of both of them. I love Muppet Christmas Carol, just because watching Michael Caine play the role completely straight while he's surrounded by Muppets and walking, as it turns out, suspended on boards over the pits where the puppeteers had to be, and he never breaks a smile. I love that. But you know, at the heart of that is really the love between, and I blank on the main character's name, and his wife with the kids and Tiny Tim.
Cratchit.
Bob Cratchit.
Bob Cratchit.
Yeah, I mean, really, their family and their love story is kind of at the heart of that in terms of setting an example for Scrooge. And of course, Scrooge's past failed romance because he couldn't commit, but then his nephew with a happy marriage. So, you know, there actually is a romance component to that. And the other one is It's a Wonderful Life for the same reason. You know, it's really Jimmy Stewart's character there, and that love that transcends everything. And then the love of the community for him, for all he's done. So those two are kind of they're not exactly Hallmark romances, but I think they'll count.
I love It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, that's my kind of default holiday movie. But my favorite holiday movie, which is not a romance at all, is the original cartoon version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I just don't think anything beats it for pure Christmas spirit entertainment. Even It's a Wonderful Life, because they're kind of in different categories. One's a cartoon and it's shorter and has a much more, shall we say, obvious lesson in it. But it doesn't beat you over the head with the lesson. And then the book that I love, the Christmas story I love, is O. Henry's Gift of the Magi.
Mm-hmm.
And when our son was small, somebody came out with a beautiful picture book of that story.
Get the same one.
Yeah. And it's just, that's my favorite general Christmas story.
My favorite children's story that I can still probably quote every word to is Bear Wakes Up for Christmas. It's a very recent, beautifully illustrated thing about the bears hibernating and all the other animals. He wakes up to say Merry Christmas to them. And I have a little section on my bookshelves, you know, the favorite books the comfort reads, you know. I don't know if any of y'all know Joan Overfield. She wrote in the 90s and early 2000s, and then she stopped writing. I'm not sure why, but she wrote a book called The Christmas Affair. And this thing is so well thumbed. And if I'm like feeling really blue, even if it's July, I will go pick this book up and read it. And a couple by Joe Beverly that I still have in that little Christmas section in the bookshelf, because they're just so good and they're so hopeful.
Well, my Christmas movies are very traditional, I'm afraid. I always decorate the Christmas tree to White Christmas, because I mean, that is just everything about Christmas. I love it. I love the lines. I love the music. And I also love Miracle on 34th Street for the same reason, because it's just the original black and white one. Because it's just full of all the wonderful feelings of Christmas. But my overall favorite of all is Christmas in Connecticut. I absolutely love Christmas in Connecticut. It is wonderful. Just my favorite. Everything from the Hungarian character, who's obviously more famous from being in Casablanca, but you know, just all the characters are so lovely. And one of these days I will write a Christmas romance which is inspired by Christmas in Connecticut. But going on to, you have your little Christmas favorite. Mine is Debbie Maycomber wrote a series of stories featuring the angels Shirley, Goodness and Mercy. And if you ever want a feel-good, lovely story at Christmas, any of the Christmas angel stories featuring these mischievous angels that everything always goes wrong and Gabriel is always shaking his head at them, they're really worth a read. They're lovely.
I'd also like to plug Grace Burrows writes wonderful Christmas historical romances. and they're full of emotion, and at the same time, they kind of capture the holiday spirit, whether it's the reunion of her big family, whose name I'm naturally blanking on now that I need it, or whether it's somebody alone at Christmas who ends up not being so alone. But every Christmas, I read Grace's Christmas romances because there's a huge payoff, and they're so beautifully done. And also the covers are gorgeous, which doesn't hurt either, but it's the story.
There's a multi-author collection that also riffs off the idea of a Christmas angel, only it's a tree topper or a somewhat larger statue it shows up in somebody's life when they really need it. And that's a series written by a number of male authors, but I love those Christmas angel stories. And there's a similar one that deals with different snow globes. And so, you know, in some cases people go into the snow globe, in some cases people come out of the snow globe, and it's all just wonderful and kind of paranormal and magic and lots of romance. Well, folks, we have, you know, the hour has gone really, really fast. So thank you all very much for being here. But before we go, let's tell everybody where they can find you online. So Nancy, kick us off.
You can find information about me and about my books at nancynorthcott.com. I'm on Facebook occasionally as Nancy Northcott Author, and I spend far more time on Twitter than is good for me, and on Twitter I'm at Nancy Northcott.
Jeannie?
Well, I would say pretty much the same thing, except with Jeanne Adams in the JeanneAdams.com. I'm on Twitter more than I am on anything else. I'm also on Instagram and Pinterest, and you can find me on all major digital platforms.
Great. Donna?
Well, you can find me. My website is dmac or DonnaMacMeans.com. But let me spell the last name because it's a little different. MacMeans. So it's DonnaMacMeans.com. I am not on Twitter. I am on Facebook. And heck, just email me. That works too. You can find me, believe me. I'm usually online somewhere in the universe.
How about you, Anna?
I'm going to do what Donna did, and I'm going to spell my surname because it's S-U-G-D, not the other way around, E-N. So you can find my website, annasugden.com. I'm on Facebook most of all. I do have a Twitter account, but not really on it very much. I also have a Pinterest account, but like Donna, contact me through my website, and you can pretty much find me around, especially during holidays.
Awesome. Caren?
My website is where all of my book information is posted, and that is Caren with a C. So it's CarenCrane, very alliterative, CarenCrane.com. And I am often on Facebook, and my author page there is Caren Crane Author.
And I'm online as Gail Z. Martin for my non-romance stuff, and Morgan Brice for my male romance. For Gail Z. Martin, make sure you get the Z because it's a common name, and that way you get the right Gail. And then for Morgan Brice, the last name is B-R-I-C-E. I'm on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, I'm out there. So pretty easy to find. Well, thank you all very much for being here today. Of course, we've been talking about Christmas at Caynham Castle and Trick or Treat at Caynham Castle, as well as a lot of other holiday favorites. And thank you for watching and listening. We'll have a lot more holiday romance and other great content here on Continual. So see you out there.